Sometimes being a professed Christian is kind of hard, because everyone likes to come right up to your face and tell you exactly why you're wrong, but also it's hard, especially in these times, to know where the Bible stands on certain social issues. Well, you no longer need to wonder. So, what does the Bible say about the 6,000-year-old world theory? Scientifically speaking, the universe started 13.5 billion years ago. The Earth was formed about 4.6 billion years ago, and the first human-like creature to come around started about 3.2 million years ago. All this is really cool and really fascinating because I'm really an early Earth enthusiast. However, this is all wrong. The early Earth theory has been around since Moses basically wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, and the way that this is all assumed is through the genealogy given in books like Genesis and the 2 Chronicle books, which all added together with other dates given throughout the Old Testament seems to trace the world to around 4000 BC plus 1 week. So why does this differ so vastly from modern science? Well, I guess the only way to start is to just ask questions and get them answered. The first question I can think about is, how come we can date rocks back to literally any time before 4000 BC? Alright, so this is a fun one mixed with science. See, the main way that scientists can date an object is through the use of radioactive dating, which is almost similar to how most people date. Radioactive dating is best described like an hourglass. You have the parent element in the top section of the hourglass. As the radioactive form decays into different elements, the daughter element falls into the bottom chamber. So you are merely calculating the rate of change in what you have and the totals of the daughter and parent element, so that will give you the parent's age and therefore the age of whatever you were measuring. Got it? Good. The problem with this, however, is that you don't know the initial amount. Because you weren't around when the parent element formed or started to fall from the hourglass, you have no idea how long the hourglass represents, unless it's an hour in glass, which you would think all of them are, but they're not. You have to assume that this parent and daughter relationship are in a closed experiment with no outside factors, which is impossible to assume since you weren't there. Think about it. If you walk in on an hourglass and it's about halfway to the middle of pouring into the bottom, you have no idea how long the hourglass represents, and it's not until you reach the very end of the pouring and then you calculate the rate of change from when you viewed it until it is finished can you hope to find out how long it was meant to be measured. And that's just hoping that nothing sped it up or slowed it down when you weren't there. So radioactive dating in itself cannot be a sure science because there's too many assumptions to be had, because it's the Earth. Nothing is a closed experiment. Alright, so here's my second question. Just forget the rocks. Don't we have people that were around, like, before 4000 BC? Well, for people to be around long before Adam and Eve roamed the Earth, they would have had to die, correct? There would at least have to be one death, right? Well, that's impossible. Romans 5:12 says, "Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, in this way death spread to all people because all sinned." Now, some people try to say that the fossils of people we see are pre-Adamites, whatever that means. It's supposed to be a soulless, non-human-like animal, but I don't buy that. This couldn't be true because Neanderthals actually show signs of art, culture, and even religion. And on top of that, there has been actual Neanderthal DNA sequencing done that shows we share some common genomes with them. So they couldn't just be some soulless body walking around, but there also couldn't have been death either. Because death entered the mix after Adam sinned, so too could life not exist outside the Garden of Eden. And in fact, it doesn't until Genesis 3:17 through 19. God curses the ground, and since the Garden of Eden is still around after that and is still guarded, we have to assume that the ground cursed is everywhere outside the garden. Long story short, there could not have been anybody outside of the Garden of Eden until Genesis 3 kicks in, and genealogy covers that time after this, so that means the measurements taken to prove the age of these human-like beings has to be wrong. If you still have questions about that, see my first question. Third question, I don't really understand what you just said there, but what about evolution? We can prove that! No, you can't. Adaptation and evolution are two totally different things. Even micro and macro are two separate entities entirely. Evolution is a wasteful and random process that causes millions of creatures to die, and we know that death cannot happen before Adam sins, but we'll just exclude that from the sake of this argument. In Genesis 1:31 it says, God saw all that he had made and said it was very good indeed. So if God used evolution to make the world's organisms, basically he would look at Adam on top of millions and millions of years of dead animals in the ground and declare, that is good. If God is all-powerful, then why would he even need evolution, which is basically a mistake cleaning process to create mankind? It's inefficient, and if God exists, that's one of the last ways he would have done it. Fourth question. But surely there are signs all around that prove the universe itself is older than 6,000 years? Well, let's look at dinosaurs to start. They're supposed to be, what, like 65 million years old? Well, that's just wrong. Many dinosaur fossils still have the original bone without the permineralization of the bone. The whole fossilization of a bone can literally just take a few weeks. Some bones are found to even be in conditions where they are at best a couple centuries old. How would dinosaurs still be around like a couple centuries ago when they were supposed to be wiped out freaking 65 million years ago? That makes no sense, Jurassic Park. I'm looking right at you. Take, for instance, the living fossils like jellyfish, which could not be millions of years old without literally any changes happening to them, which really speaks against the whole billions to millions of years Earth timescale that there should be. Take also, for instance, the Coconino Sandstone in the Grand Canyon, which apparently houses a bunch of fossils of animals and yet is utterly devoid of plant life. Which must mean that these rocks are not ecosystems of an era buried over like eons of time as evolutionists claim. The evidence is more consistent with catastrophic transport than burial during a massive global flood like we see in what was that dude? I don't know. Noah, I think? And all of this really eliminates supposed evidence for over millions of years. And if that didn't get you, look at this. More science. Carbon-14 in oil, coal, fossil wood, and diamonds gives us a timeline of 1,000 years, nowhere near the millions of years that it's supposed to be made. By the way, neutrons in uranium decaying into converting nitrogen into C14 doesn't really explain this phenomenon either. It has to really just be the Bible in this case. Did you know that the moon used to have a magnetic field around it, and that the rocks of the moon demonstrate a residual magnetic field in the moon, which makes no sense if it's been around for billions of years? Why would something like that leave an imprint? Oh, and the same is true for Mercury, Neptune, and Uranus. Planets. Also, just FYI, the rate of change of Saturn's ring's disappearance is inconsistent with the thought of it being billions of years old. Just thought I'd shoehorn that in there too, because might as well. I love facts, you know me. Oh, also by the way, and according to stellar evolution theory, as the sun's core transforms from hydrogen to helium by means of nuclear fusion, the molecular weight increases, which would compress the sun's core, increasing fusion rate. The upshot is that over several billions of years, the sun should have brightened about 40% or 25% since life on Earth started. For the latter, this translates to a 16 to 18 degrees Celsius increase in temperature on the Earth. The current average temperature on Earth is 15 degrees Celsius. You see where I'm going with this? So apparently when life started on Earth, it was about -2 degrees Celsius, which doesn't really quite work for me. By the way, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is freezing temperature, is 0 degrees Celsius. So -2 degrees Celsius is roughly in the mid-20s in Fahrenheit. And that's an average world temperature. Can you imagine that? Look, do I even need to go on at this point? I'm able to use science to explain away science. Don't you see how contradictory science is? And the fact that, like, literally they have to have more faith in their theories than I do in the Bible. You look at science to explain what you want, and because so many people are so set in trying to incorporate every scientific theory into the Bible, we forget that the Bible was actually there to record the science. So wouldn't that technically make the Bible the most accurate scientific account of the world ever? Or am I just like pulling that like randomly out of my butt? Since God gave the words to the authors of the Bible and God was there and had a huge hand in everything having to do with the beginning, the Bible was just the original origins of the species. And drop the mic. So what was my act of random kindness? You know, just like in this episode, I really like looking at the small things because the small things really add up to make a huge difference. And I was actually at CC's, well, technically last week, but the way that filming works, I can't really talk about the future week because I haven't done it yet. But anyways, I was at CC's with my youth group, and one of the dudes, some random guy I don't know, was up there getting some of the pizza. Shoot, what was it? It was like the apple pie pizza, whatever. But anyways, he was having trouble getting it because it was just like flopping all over the place. And I was like, yeah, that's a hard one to get, isn't it? You know, just, you know, that's how people talk in public to strangers apparently. And he was like, yeah, it is kind of tough, but I'm also kind of inept. And I was like, here, let me help you. And, like, used my plate to put it on. Anyways, I felt like I had kind of a profound instance on him because I didn't really see him sitting with anybody at his table. And so I thought, hey, maybe that made him feel a little bit better. I don't know. He might not have been feeling bad at all. But I love doing little things like that because I feel like it makes me have so much of a huger ego. No, it's not that. I was joking. I love interacting with people like that because it makes me feel better about myself, and hopefully it'll make them feel a little bit better if they even need it. So if you found this episode intriguing and you want to go see more, go ahead and hit subscribe so you'll be immediately notified when the next video comes up, or you can go ahead and go to my channel and see the ones that are already up. Also, a couple of months ago, I started a thing called the Action of the Week, where we as Christians go out and do some act of random kindness, which is a reference to Evan Almighty. I'll be doing it as you saw, and I hope you will too. Please, I would love to hear about all the good work that you've done. God bless, and may the Force be with you. The good Jurassic Park. Showtime. Think about it. Breaking out the old buddy Genesis. I feel like I've done Genesis in literally every single episode for the past couple months. Am I right in that? I don't remember. Permineralization. Holy cow, that's a word. Why does this one have all the big words? Ugh.